Today we're going from this raw data to this Databricks dashboard, which is the first one that I've ever built. And that's because in this video, we're going to be taking a closer look at Databricks' AI BI dashboard. They're a newer tool to the marketplace. And well, what better way is there to learn a tool than to use it? Which means that we're going to go from this raw data that I downloaded from Kaggle all the way to this dashboard that I built on Databricks. Now, in order to get there, we're going to have to use some Python code to ingest the data into Databricks. We're going to have to clean the data just a little bit, and we're going to have to normalize it just a little bit more. Then we also need a way to get the data from Databricks into the Databricks dashboard. Now, Databricks dashboards can ingest data via a SQL query, but we're going to be doing something special. We're going to be using a metric view. So we're going to review how to quickly build out a metric view. And if you are interested in learning more about metric views, I'll link a video down below in the video description. But before we get into all of that, I've currently been posting polls asking you guys what videos you want me to make next. And that's actually where this video idea came from. As you can see, I posted, hey, what video do you want to see next? And you guys voted and said that you wanted to see how to build your first dashboard in Databricks. So that's this video. And if you want to participate in polls like these, please consider subscribing, liking this video, and looking out for the next poll that I post, because that is how you can participate in this community and let me know what you want to learn about. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get started on this project. Now, I'm going to be pasting off of the completed notebook that I used to build this dashboard already into this new blank dashboard. If you can't read the text, if I'm moving too fast for you to type, don't worry, I will link the completed notebook down below on my GitHub in the video description. So if you're trying to follow along and you can't see, or if I'm moving too fast, don't worry about it. It's available on my GitHub for you to download down below. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is we need to set up our catalogs, and we need to create some schemas and a volume. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bronze catalog, a silver catalog, and a gold catalog. And then because this is a project, I'm going to create a unique schema for this project. And that unique schema will be sales demo. So I'm going to create it in every single catalog. And then because we're going to be ingesting data off Kaggle, in the bronze schema, I'm going to create a volume called raw files. So let's go ahead and let's run this on our SQL warehouse. And by the way, if you want to get Databricks, I made a video on how to get Databricks for free. This is Databricks free edition. And I'll link that video down below in the video description. All right, so this is now run. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to import the Kaggle Python module. Now, the reason why we are going to import this module is because this is where we're going to be fetching data from. However, this module isn't installed by default in Databricks, so we're going to copy and paste over a command that is pip install Kaggle Hub, so that way we can then import the module on our own. Once this is now imported, we are now going to go ahead and we are going to capture a data set and then clean the data and then load the data into our bronze tables. So here we are downloading the sales data set. Then we're going to load this, all of these files onto our volume. And then from that volume, we are then going to use these methods right here to clean the data. And then finally, we'll load it into our bronze tables. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click run. And then after a few seconds, we can go ahead, we can go into our catalog explorer, open up our bronze catalog, go into our sales demo schema, expand our volume, look in our raw files, and see all of the data the Kaggle dataset downloaded. We also can then go into tables and we can see all of the data that we loaded, brought on over. Now, I am only going to care about the Amazon sales report because that is all of the raw Amazon data that we're going to be analyzing. So let's go ahead and let's run a simple select star from our Amazon sales table. So we'll go ahead and we'll insert this over and then click run. Now, as we can see, once this data is loaded, it's relatively unclean. There's a lot of null values and it's just not super easy to look at. So the next step is we need to clean and normalize the data slightly into our silver schema. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new cell, switch it over here to SQL, and we're going to go ahead and we are going to create a bunch of tables in our silver schema. So we're going to create a table for products, right, where SKU is not null. We're going to create a table for promotions, currency, an order header table, and then an order line item table. So let's go ahead and let's click run and build all of these tables. And just like that, if we collapse our bronze catalog and go into our silver catalog and then expand sales demo, we now have semi-normalized data, right? It's not perfectly normalized, but we have nice, clean data in tables. But it's not perfect, which means that we now need to go ahead and create some gold tables. Now, what is the difference between gold and silver? Well, pretty much I'm using a bunch of coalesce statements to go ahead and fill the null values along with populating some surrogate keys, which is what I'm doing right here. So let's go ahead and run this and hopefully create all of our gold tables. Now, once we have all of our gold tables created, I'm actually going to denormalize orders and order line just with a view just to make things easier. And in that view, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in all of the columns that I think I probably want to use in my data set. So I'm going to go right here and I'm going to create a view called gold sales demo.vw orders. And with that, I have, all of that order data along with some, not all the columns, but some of the columns stripped down. And I'm interjoining on order ID. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And while that's running, let's go take a look at what's going on in our gold schema. So we have all of our tables now named either dim or fact, and we now have VW orders. We also have VW orders metric view, which is what we're about to create. So let's go over here to catalog. Then in our catalog, let's go into gold. Then let's go into our sales demo schema. And then let's go over here to VW orders. And let's go right here to create. And then let's go and click create metric view. And that is going to bring us into our metric view editor. Now, since we started from a view, it actually added all of the columns in and created some measures and did a pretty good job of that. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to paste in an addition or a different definition for that metric view. I'll link a video down below where I talked more about metric views. It seems like I have a video for everything, but I'll link that video down below. But at a high level, I'm joining on some additional data, and then I'm going through and selecting some columns with some nice names, and then creating measures down here. I created an order line items, items per order, a unit sold, and then some revenue columns down here broken up by status. Now, when you create measures, you can use Databricks SQL syntax, which is really nice and makes things pretty straightforward. I had some initial questions on like, hey, how do I format this? But like, again, you can just use the Databricks SQL formatting function, which is really pretty cool. Once you have this metric view created, all you have to do is go over here and click this create button. Now, I've already created a metric view, so I don't have to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this and abandon changes. All right, we are now ready to create our dashboard. We can either go right here and select our metric view and then click this create button right here and click dashboard, or we can go over here and we can click this new button right here and then go over here to dashboard. I'm going to do that. And then in this dashboard section, I'm going to click right here to go to data. Now, I have a few different options to process data into Databricks dashboards. One, I can write a SQL query, and within that SQL query, I can add parameters that I can then reference later on. I can also then add on custom calculations onto that SQL query. Alternatively, I can select a existing data source like a metric view, a view, or a table, which is what I'm going to do in this scenario. Or finally, you can actually upload your own file. Now, you can create multiple data sets in a Databricks dashboard, right? So I'm continuing to click create here, and they keep on popping in. However, I haven't found a way for you to link them together. So you can't have multiple data sets created and then create like an individual star schema. That's the purpose of a metric view or actually writing SQL yourself. So I'm going to stick with this singular data set. I'm going to click this add data source, and then I'm going to select the metric view that we had created earlier. And as you can see, it's going to run, and then it will pop open that metric view. We can also create our own custom calculations by create custom calculation over here, giving it a name, and then defining it. And if we hover over this little question mark, it'll link us to some documentation on custom calculations. But jumping back over, here we have our data sets. So it's now time for us to start building. So we're going to go over here to this untitled page. And by the way, we can create more pages by clicking this little plus button. We're going to only be creating a one-page dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and delete those. And we can give our page a name by double clicking it. So I'm going to give it a name of home. And while we're at it, I'm also going to name my dashboard as sales order demo dash. All right. Over here to the side, we can create some global filters. So let's go ahead and let's add some global filters. I'm going to click that little plus button, and it creates a bunch of new widgets. Now I'm going to create filters for year, quarter, and month. So let's go ahead and edit that. So I'm going to go right here to year, then I'm going to go to quarter, and then I'm going to go right here to month. And these filters are all single value filters, although you can change them to multiple values, which would allow you to select multiple values at a time, a date range picker, or a date range picker, free text entry, or a slider. Now, I am going to go ahead and set these to multiple values, and I'm going to start adding some fields. So I have the month one selected, which is why it's highlighted blue. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click month. And then right here, I'm going to go ahead and click quarter. And then right here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click year. Now, as you notice, they all start to have these little icons going. And that's because as you're working on these dashboards, it's executing queries against the data set. All right. Now that we have these global filters created, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to close this panel by clicking this little X right here. And it's now time to add our visuals. We have a few different options when it comes to adding visuals in Databricks. First, we can click this button right here to add a visual. We can click this button right here to add a text box, or we could click this button right here to add in a filter. We're going to be creating visuals. So I'm going to click this add visual button, and then the Databricks dashboard operates on a grid. So that's, as you can see, there's some faint grid lines over here, and you can place your visual. Once your visual has been created, it will give you an AI prompt. But in this case, I know what I want to create, so I don't need to use AI. I am then going to copy and paste this a few different times by just hitting Control C and Control V. And as you can see, I actually accidentally pasted the JSON that I had there. So I'm going to select this, I'm going to paste that here, and then I'm going to click here, copy this, paste it here, click here, copy that, and then click right. Oh, and I did that one more time. But right here, copy, and then paste. Now, I'm going to set all of these to what are called counters, but are really just a simple card visual that displays a metric and then has the option to have a better or worse metric. So as we go, bum, 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 I'll select all these through. The next thing that I'm going to want to do is set measures on these. So for this first one, I'm going to click this little plus button, and then I'm going to go ahead and select some measures, which is what's popping up right up here to the top. So the first measure that I'm going to add is going to be units sold. So that'll be right there. The second measure that I'm going to go right here is going to be revenue. So I'll select revenue. Then right here, I'm going to switch this out of combo to counter, right? And I'm going to click this value button, and I'm going to change this to average price per unit. And then over here, I'm going to go counter value. This will be our total number of orders. So that'll be orders. And then this will be our total order items. And then this one right here will be our average number of orders. So let's scroll down, and I think it should be items per order, right? Now, as you notice, none of these have any headers. So we need to go through and add those in. And the way you do that is by selecting this little title button. You can edit this by double clicking in here. So you can go units, and then you can change the formatting of where this title actually is by clicking these three dots right up here and then clicking center. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give these all a quick title. So I'm going to turn that on one by one here. And let's go ahead and let's title this. So this would be revenue, right? This would be average rev per unit. This would be orders, and then this would be order items. Now, one of the things as I'm doing this that I would like to see would be like a format painter, right? Because I could get this card looking how I want it to, but then I don't have a way to copy that style over onto the other cards. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue centering and centering. Then just a quick call out, the way that you format these values is you select the visual, and then you go over to the value and you click on the value. Since this is currency, I'm going to click this custom, and I'm going to set it to currency right here. And then since this is currency, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing by going over here to format, custom, and then currency. Now, uh, one of the things I like to do just to make it kind of nice is I like to go bold right here. And as you can see, there's also the ability to add in some conditional styling. I don't really have any conditionals that I want to apply to this, so I'm not going to bother with this. So I'm going to click this little exit, but I am just going to continue on here and continue to format these. Now, in the dashboard that I showed at the start of the video, I had two additional video or God, why do I keep on saying? I had two additional visuals down below this counter. So the way that we can add those is by just simply clicking this add visual button and then pasting right here. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger by clicking expanding that down and then copying and pasting this over. I really do like this Databricks grid system. My one complaint is sometimes it's really easy to trigger the grid. So it would be really nice if we could lock a visual in place so it didn't move. So for example, say, hey, I don't want you to move anymore, lock in place. So now it's time to move on to our two largest visuals. And the visual that we're going to be building down here is going to be what's called a sand key. Now, the idea with a sand key is that you're showing data moving through different stages. It's great when you're trying to kind of break down a process and show how there's a bunch of little individual factors that are contributing to like a larger number, like for example, revenue. Uh, in this case, I am going to show a breakdown between style and then size, which I think is kind of an interesting flow of data. And I'm going to show revenue. Well, actually, I'm going to show orders, I think, by that breakdown. So right here, right, we can go orders. And right off the bat, what you can kind of see is that we have way too many styles to really get anything out of this visual. So how are we going to fix that? Well, we need to go with a category that's a little less granular. So I'm going to click this little minus button right here, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add in another category that perhaps isn't quite as much of a big deal. Now, one of the things that I've found when I'm using Databricks dashboard, or like a feature that I really wish I had, was the ability to kind of drag, for example, this one over or this one under, and that isn't something that exists. So in order to kind of flip this, so categories on this side, and then it's breaking down to the more granular size, I have to actually remove size here and then click this little plus button right here and then add size back in. But that does give us this really good kind of breakdown of like, oh, look, the majority of my revenue is coming from selling sets. And out of that, I'm selling the most number of mediums. And this is kind of a breakdown that I did when I was working for apparel companies quite a bit. Now it's time for us to work on this second visual over here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select it, and we're going to be building out a bar graph. So there's nothing for me to change over here. However, I am going to add in a x-axis. I'm going to use the search functionality to look for date. And there it is down below on fields. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select that date. And once that has been added in, I can then go ahead and start to set on the y-axis my different measures. And for me, that is going to be our different revenue types. So the first revenue type that I'm going to click in is going to be shipped revenue. Then I'm going to click this little plus button right here, and I am going to bring in our canceled revenue, which should be over here. And then the next thing that I am going to bring in over here is going to be our pending revenue, which should be somewhere over here. Now, one of the things you might notice is that this right now is kind of just showing by date. And we can, that's happening because kind of this scale type and then this continuous type. Um, what we can go ahead and do if we want to show this daily is either we can click this daily button right here, right? And it'll calculate out as daily, or we can switch this into a categorical view by clicking this categorical, and then it'll treat that date as a category without any transformations, especially if I hit this none, which should make this report a lot faster. Now I can go ahead and I can change these colors by kind of playing around here, and I can add a legend title. But one of the things I can't do is I can't rearrange this legend right here. Or if I go over here and go down to the legend, I can only have it on the right or on the bottom. I can't go ahead and center, for example, this legend right here along there, and I also can't put it on the top, which I do not love. I want a little bit more control of the legend. But from there, we've pretty much built out the dashboard that I showed you at the start of this video. So it is time to go ahead and publish this. And when I go ahead and publish it, I'm given two options. The first option is that I can publish it with my credentials. And the second option is that I can publish it without my credentials, but that would require that whoever is viewing the dashboard also have permissions. For now, I'm going to embed it or publish it with my credentials, and I'm going to go ahead and hit that publish button. And then from there, I can go ahead and copy the link so we can take a quick look at it. Here it is, it's loading. And here is our new dashboard. Now, one of the things I actually really like about Databricks dashboards is that it has a little refresh button up here that, depending on the permissions you give people, they can click, which is just great, especially if the data is maybe getting a little stale. The other thing that you can also do is you can pop back open that global filters button and you'll have them all available right here. And with that, you've just seen me build my first Databricks dashboard. Now, if you enjoyed this video and if you enjoy business intelligence content, in particular Microsoft Power BI, subscribe. And thanks for watching. Have a good night.